Well, hello, can everyone hear me? Rich, Donna, Juliet, Refugio, welcome. Good to have you all. And of course, so lovely to see the people that I'm blessed to have in the room with me as well. It's always nice to see everyone in three dimensions. You almost forget how that looks. Um, but welcome for those of you that are online as well. We do show 10, so we do have a quorum. We will officially call this meeting to order at 6:05 p.m. All right, on a scale of 1 to 4, 1 absolutely miserable to 4, I'm feeling great. Where is everyone? Don't give me any middle fingers right now. Like, how are we? Are we doing okay? How's everyone feeling? Give us a little. Yeah, general, just in general. Yeah. Yeah, 3.
You just told us about that.
Okay, good. Yeah, put some threes on the board.
Normally here, but I'm kind of like here today.
Okay, good. Welcome. I'm glad to hear most everyone's at a 3. If anyone, has some processing or wants to talk, we're always welcome to that. We are going to navigate. It will be an interesting transition as all organizations navigate the transition to hybrid models. One thing that I think, have found successful is that we have found a new point of access for people that maybe do not have the ability to mobilize to get to meetings and can maybe just, meet from home. We understand that this is going to be something that will be with us for the foreseeable future. And I think it's actually an exciting opportunity to see what we could do as we re-envision and realign our goals to branch out and really ensure that what we do, we can outreach maybe in different and new ways and in exciting ways that we've learned over the past few years. So I'm really happy to have you all here. What I want to think about is, when we start thinking about team builders and when we start thinking about those things, I want to encourage everyone to start thinking, because what I'd like to do is I'd like to maybe assign each month every one of you to bring a team builder, something that we can do that brings us closer together. Maybe it's in your wheelhouse. Maybe it's something that you're passionate about. Maybe it's something that you've done in a workshop on inclusivity, or maybe it's something that you've seen done that we can bring together so that we can start building our toolkit of how do we get to know each other as we continue our work and continue to build and maintain the trust of each other in that work. As we all know, we have sometimes challenging conversations, but challenging conversations are not bad. That's how we grow. As long as we have a process for how we accept those conversations, how we receive those conversations, how we deliver them, I think those are important. So really just once again, excited to be with all of you and do this work. So I want you all to think, and what we could do is at this time, if you would like to think about a team builder that could be accessible for friends that are outside of our physical environment, as well as effective for the people within our physical environment, that would be awesome. So if you have ideas, let us know, but maybe next month we can start scheduling them out ahead of time so you have plenty of time to decide and figure out what you'd like to do. Okay, so moving into one of the things that we definitely want to welcome, we want to welcome our newest member to the Inclusivity Board, Alan. Alan, welcome. We are so happy you are here. Would you like to say a few words about just kind of why you're on the board or what you decided as you were thinking you wanted to be on the Inclusivity Board?
It's all kind of an evolution for me. So let me use one of the things that's closest to home for me, which deals with the homeless, the unhoused, a difficult group of people living a difficult kind of life. And it's been, and I think I said during that talk, it's been, as far as an evolution, I've come to realize that it's all about respect and dignity for people. And a lot of times when people say, just send them to a shelter, send them. And that's one of the, and I say them as well. So I have to learn to transition my own thinking a little bit. But that's one of the things that I've seen, and I've gotten to know a lot of people, and that I understand that in that community, everybody lies because friendships are only for the moment. And then somebody will steal from you. Somebody will hurt you. It can be very dangerous out there, and I'm really hoping that within the city we can do something positively. And in fact, today I even encountered one group. It's going to be about 7 or 8 people that are going to, it's not really an abatement. They've already gotten trespass notices. And there's another community that I was even told, because I always go there, they told me not to go without a police officer now. Don't know what the situation is, but I think if somebody needed to let me know, I would know. But anyway, there are people that are living in our community, and they do spend money in our community, but they're moving around in our community. And I would hope that we'd be able to address something like that. So, and then the other thing I had mentioned to the board when I was doing the interview is I was at the city council meeting with the proclamations that you were there. Piper was there, I believe. And, but there were all these kids behind me, the youth, and I heard, and from their names, I don't know if they're all sick or Sikh, as some people say, but I had no idea we had a dynamic community. And it was new to me, so I'm learning. So.
Well, thank you. And I think it's important that we continue to just keep ourselves open, and thank you for even, being reflective to check your own assumptions, right? I think that's important for all of us to do around where we are and who we are, and when we deal with our community and matters that are important to us as a collective, but also individually, right? So I think those are important. So welcome. We're glad to have you. We're excited to learn with you and grow with you. So, okay. Moving into old business. We have the meeting minutes from our May meeting. Do we have a motion to accept the meeting minutes as written?
So moved.
All right. Doug has moved to make a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you. That was Juliet. Thank you, Juliet. It's been motioned and seconded. Any discussion?
Beautiful.
Hearing none. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Nay? Okay. All right. So moved. Thank you very much. I do want to just first of all, yes, Bev, thank you for modeling. Seth always does an amazing job with the minutes, so I appreciate Seth, and definitely was not a very good substitute in Seth's absence. So I will say, and I fully admit it.
So much so that I didn't actually have the meeting.
Yeah. See, you were like, I'm not even, that's fine. Fine.
So
we appreciate
voted
you,
us
Seth.
to get
Thank you.
Make sure that you get.
I also want to just take a moment to acknowledge Piper and Bev. Thank you for coming out for the proclamations. We really appreciated that. Mayor Pro Tem, I know, had sort of facilitated at least one of the readings of the proclamations, and Councillor Azadi had done the other. So thank you very much. I feel like it was pretty well received, and I feel like we were well represented.
Great.
Right? Cool. And speaking of that, we move into the Juneteenth proclamation. Cody, would you talk a little bit about that?
did Kate send a link to it? Sorry. Okay.
Yeah, there's a link in
Okay,
the.
fantastic. So that's the council meeting agenda posting has taken earlier so that you're getting the meeting information 12 days before the meeting now. So 2 Wednesdays before. So that's why we had sort of moved through that proclamation process a little quicker than usual. So what the link is the memo and the proclamation itself. We would like to know who will be there on Monday night. The proclamation will be given this Monday, the 13th, to accept the proclamation on behalf of Inclusivity Board.
That would be around 7 o'clock. Okay. And just so we can see, it looks like a summary statement. If I could just read the summary statement since it's here. Juneteenth is the oldest nationally celebrated commemoration of the ending of slavery in the United States. Juneteenth is almost always centered around education and self-improvement. This date celebrates African American freedom and achievement, and led by the efforts of Texas State Legislator Al Edwards. Juneteenth became an official Texas state holiday on January 1st, 1980. So that gives you just a summary of the information. There's some background information in the document that is linked to our agenda. Would anybody or anyone rather be willing to attend the meeting on behalf of the Inclusivity Board and accept this proclamation?
So I will be a maybe. I'm very fond of this recognition and everything, but my mom had a mini stroke class Thursday, so I may be out of town. So I will be a maybe. But if there's someone that can be a definite, then that would be awesome.
Thanks, Juliet, and thank you. Thinking of your mom as well.
I should be able to attend this one. They're about 7.
Great. And I could free up my schedule and certainly attend. I agree. This is important. This is exceptionally important for us to recognize this. And just be prepared, I would say, to speak a few words on behalf of the Inclusivity Board upon receiving this, whoever is the official representative. So Doug, if you want to be that, that would be great.
Okay.
And Juliet, if you're
Guidance
there,
would be
that
welcome.
lovely as well.
Justin, would you want to reach out to Miguel? Because he had a fair amount of offering.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He did a lot of.
Yeah,
And
and
I don't know if
he might
Yeah.
be willing to serve as the, yeah, because he did do a lot of the wordsmithing and kind of the recommendations of that. So, great. Okay. Thank you. Any questions on Juneteenth or the proclamation? Okay, great. We'll move on to our city council report with Mayor Pro Tem DeMott. Mayor Pro Tem.
Been mostly busy. Obviously, we had one holiday off, so trying to get back into the swing of things this last meeting. There was one specific thing I wanted to bring up to you guys because it's around diversity and inclusion, is the DEI position that was taken out of the budget. And I know there was a fair amount of concern about that. And so I want to at least give my opinion about it and then also share with you something that's on the agenda for next week. So from my perspective, it was something that was recommended by the city manager. I mean, that's not just perspective, that part's fact. The reason that, I'm comfortable with that is because of what he shared, and what he shared is, and I agree with this tact, is as an organization, whatever the organization is, that should be something that you always do. That should be how you do business. And it shouldn't necessarily be up to one position. It should be part of your culture. I mean, if you're going to be really effective about it. And so that was part of the reason why I agreed with the recommendation. I think that there was some afterthought after hearing some feedback from the city manager. And you can see in the agenda memo, there's an adjustment where the full-time headcount is still not there. But under his authority, he just laid out so that people understood it, that he's going to be doing some consulting, bringing in a consultant, is my understanding, that would be able to do that same work. So the work is still going to happen. It's just not going to happen at this time as a FTE, because what I have heard is that there was still a desire from council, as well as some staff that said we have some work that we want to do to enhance that, that area of culture. So that's basically my understanding of it. So I wanted to get that in front of you because I have heard some blowback from community members about that portion, because there was some debate about it in the meeting. So for whatever that's worth, and obviously there's differing opinions about it. But I thought that it would be important for at least you guys to understand that, and that there's, still work going to be done. And there was some change in what we originally heard in that presentation, being that there's going to be some consultants brought in to do some work around that. Some of the other things that are coming up, or if you listen to this last week, we did a lot more about water. And so we were looking at water supply, conservancy trends. We gave some feedback to the presentations as far as some other things we want to see. Like, for example, in the trends, they show all the water users. So all the water user means people who we also supply water to through our system, such as Shaw Heights, And there's some other areas. And so I want to be able to see how Westminster has actually done in conservancy when you peel those other people out. Because as you know, we're doing a fair amount of education around ways to conserve water. So I think it is important for us to understand the trends between the folks that are getting our education piece and the ones we're providing water that aren't seeing those education pieces. So that was one thing I wanted to see. There were some other areas that folks wanted to see as far as that data, so we can understand long-term trends, but also what we could do to continue to encourage conservancy. But with that also comes in the fact that, the more people conserve, the less money the utility makes. So there has to be that balance. There also was a clear need to get some of the folks up to speed about our drought management plan that was adopted, because not everybody was on council when that was adopted. Was that last year that was adopted? Mm-hmm. And then there was some adjustment to it last year too, that I asked them to remind us, because I know I was against the original plan, not because of the plan, but because of some of the authority it shifted from council to city manager. And there was a change that was made after the fact that we all unanimously agreed about, but I can't for the life of me remember what it was. So some of those details we thought were important to remind all of us, as well as educate some of the people who weren't here for all that. And this is all, gearing us towards what we need to do, the bigger work as far as what we're going to do for water treatment plant. And, that work continues, and they continue to bring us stuff back, because as we've talked about quite a few times, there's multiple different pieces that we're going to have to decide, and there's going to be trade-offs and all that stuff. So they're going to show us all the different levers and stuff, and they're going to continue to bring that work back to us. And I feel like at this point, we're kind of getting a steady stream of different parts of it. Every single meeting seems like, which is good, because it's going to be one of the biggest decisions that we make. Another big thing for you guys to know is, do you remember the date when the city manager is closing? I don't think we're
3 days.
3 days. Because I know we're not having to extend it, because we did get enough. There was a thought about extending the period and when we accept resumes, because depending on what kind of return we got, we did get enough that we feel we're going to close it off of the original date. And last I heard, I think it was over 25 applicants. I'm still understanding that people could be waiting until to the end. So it's obviously a sought after job, not surprising. So that'll continue us down that road. Trying to think what else we have coming up. Water rates did go into effect as of this last week. So you'll see that on your next bill cycle, that it will be reflective of the new rates. I guess the other one that I'd mentioned, I can't really go into too much besides it's happening starting June 1st. The collective bargaining negotiations started between the city and I think it's Lodge 25. Is their lodge, or 24, 20 something? I should know, but I don't remember. Whatever FOP lodge is, the Westminster Lodge, that's who they chose to be their bargaining body. And so that has to conclude within 30 days for ordinance for this first, what will be their first contract. So they're underway with those negotiations. I think that's a lot of summer activities obviously coming up. Beer Fest is coming up. There's taco. We're part of the Great Taco something. I know they're trying to get judges. I was the one who signed up, and then they told me I had to eat 50 different tacos. I'm like, that sounds horrible. Sounds good for about the first 10 maybe. But that's going to be a neat event. I don't know if you saw the Run Westy Run opened. That's the food truck park down by the TOD. Councilor Seymour Smith and myself got to go down there and do the grand opening. They had me pour the first beer, which I felt like I should drink it since I poured it. But it's pretty cool. I mean, so I encourage you to go check that out and patron that, because we want that to be successful. But a lot of summer things coming up. Anything that you can think of that I missed?
It's near the TOD. What's that?
71st and Hooker is basically where it's at.
The plays.
Plays are coming up.
Catamounts. Different nights.
which is fantastic. I don't know if you got to go to the one over the Semper, but it was pretty good. It's not really my gig usually, but I enjoyed it a lot when we did the Semper one. So I encourage you to go to that, especially if you enjoy plays, arts.
Got tickets Friday night.
Movie nights, movies in the park have
Yeah.
started.
Oh, they have,
There will
okay.
be two, they maybe haven't started, but they will be shortly.
On my list of things to do
they-
today. Put them on the calendar.
Council will be at two of them on August 6th and 26th. Not that they won't necessarily be at others, but as a actual, come talk to us on the 6th and 26th.
Yeah, we're trying to, for the summer, we're trying to mix in places where we've agreed to be at for sure. So that we kind of are there as part of the event instead of having additional events, understanding everybody has a lot going on, but we're trying to be as accessible as possible.
The history tours are also happening once a month, and they have been going on, so they're the first Saturday, is that right?
I think so.
Or second, June 11th, July 9th. So coming up, those are really neat in coordination with the Historic Society. And
July 30th, Beer Fest, that's important.
I know exactly.
Yeah.
I'm not missing that one.
No.
Very excited. I already have my tickets.
July
I'll see
4th,
you.
always a big hit around here. Not as much as the Beer Fest, but, and then movies started this week, June 3rd. Okay, I'm not making things up. I like it when I tell you the truth.
Yeah.
Thank you for all of those updates.
And I have just a couple follow-up questions
Yep.
about water rates. Obviously, that was something that was very near and dear to my heart.
Yep.
What is the plan to essentially identify folks that are still struggling financially? Because I know that was something that we did, we have the program that is a one-time benefit. Doesn't really cover much. How do we deal with folks that are on fixed incomes that are still struggling with utility bills?
We would want them to reach out. We don't, as a city, we don't want to go and identify because I don't know, we don't really have a way to do that, nor do I think we could legally figure out how to do that. Because there's been talk about that before, but gets into some privacy areas. But certainly if you know folks, encouraging them to participate in those programs, or if you have any ideas around how we could enhance those programs, I'd be happy to bring those ideas back.
Yeah.
I know as a council, we're always asking, are there other ways that you could accommodate?
Right.
Especially for me, like I think the seniors and fixed income folks, especially seniors,
Yep.
because and especially right now with the price of everything going up,
Property taxes and everything too.
if you're on a fixed retirement,
Yep.
your retirement's probably not going up 8% year over year. So, certainly make sure that they know those resources on the website.
Right.
But if you have ideas about ways we can enhance it, I'd be happy to try
I'm
to
just
work.
going to lob one thing out at you, which is all the Resource Central offerings, other than just like the sprinkler assessment is a freebie, right? Everything else, there's a cost of entry, right? Garden in a Box, there's only a handful that are offered for free. The rest are at a discounted rate, but they're still quite expensive. Like I even thought that they were more expensive than me seeking out individual plants, for example. So, and then also the lawn removal, right? It's up to $2, per square foot for removal, but that's assuming that you have the rest of the funds to pay for the actual removal. So if you get what I'm saying is like there's a barrier to entry for those folks that can't even afford to participate in those programs. So I don't know what the answer is, but I'd be happy to maybe try to.
We ask maybe if CBDG money could be used towards programs like that, or, I'd say the ARPA money, but I think we've pretty well allocated that bucket of money. But we could look at CBDG money because that's tied to income, and that might be a resource that we could tap. for kind of
Exactly.
things.
Exactly.
We could look into that.
Yeah, because that would be helpful. Especially for, to your point, and a lot of the discussion about seniors that are on larger properties with a lot of grass or in HOAs where you have to manage the grass in the front yard. If you wanted to remove grass, it's a cost to remove it and replace it. So how do we help them do that so that they see long-term savings?
I think that's
on their fixed
a good
incomes?
point. Maybe we take a portion of the money that we normally allocate to the one-time assistance and see if we can help a certain amount of people that is long-term, because ultimately, to your point, you maybe take them out of the cycle for the next year because you give them a more sustainable.
Exactly.
We could look into it.
Okay, cool. And I think that's it for the minute.
Cool.
Thank you.
Thank you, Michelle. I appreciate that you talked a little bit about, water conservancy and just being responsible. I read a report that came out, I think just past few days, but that by 2080, they're expecting Colorado to have about 50 to 60% less snowpack than it because of the changing conditions. Did you see that as well? So, I mean, I think it's a sense of urgency, and I think we've talked, you've talked, because I know you've led this charge a little bit, like that's an accessibility issue. That's a quality of life issue. We all know that water is a point of life, and so thank you for bringing that up. And I think we continue to have some really great riveting conversations, but we also are faced with a true sense of urgency, I believe, in some of the ways we roll things. The other thing I wanted to say, Mayor Pro Tem, or ask rather, is as we're looking at consultants, we've identified diversity and inclusivity as a need in the city to kind of underscore, and thank you for saying that. Would there be an opportunity for members of this board to be able to help support and review like consultant, like what would the process be like? Because we know that like a consultant who comes in for a day and leaves, that's not a culture changing anything, right? So like what would the process be to plan for this consultant to really embed the culture, absent of, having a full-time staff, which I think several of us are still passionate that should happen. Not to speak for anyone, but I feel I can speak for myself. That being said, is there an opportunity for us to maybe bring some feedback to council around maybe what direction we would go and like how we would work with that consultant, how much time we would have with that consultant as a city, what trainings maybe that consultant would focus on?
I'll bring it back. I'll probably actually bring it back to Jody.
Sure.
Because ultimately he runs the organization.
Sure.
So we allocate budget. And so that's why it's important. And I really honed in on this was a recommendation from Jody. But that being said, we also did make that part of our strategic plan. So and that's why I like the idea that it should be embedded as a culture thing, not here's this one person who, spends their day doing this, trying to go find places where we're not doing a good job. Like we want that to be a cultural change. But I will tell you that at least 1 to 2 council members brought up in the conversation, like, well, we have the inclusivity board. Isn't that part of why we have those folks who are helping? So I think that that's a natural thing that we should try to figure out how we incorporate this group, because that's your charge. I will say the other thing that I wanted, this is Dave's opinion versus the whole council, is I think stepping back from some of these, like I saw some posts on social media about this particular topic and this, both these topics, both the water conservancy and the DEI. And I think that if you step back from people's feelings of, this is more a conservative council and I just was waiting for the shoe to drop, and we need to have these conversations, because I think what I'm finding in every member of this council is we all often want the same goal, but we have a different way of getting there. So I think that when it comes to and that we were talking about this before the whole group got here, when you look at inclusivity in a true form, it's everybody. And I think that one of the things that people often miss is they feel like, well, if this group gets that, then we're going to get left behind. And then you truly don't have inclusivity. You have, you're trading one for the other, which is really what you want in that, to have a true culture that embraces everybody, as long as they're not, devaluing or taking somebody else's rights, I guess is the best way I would look at it. And I only bring it up because I feel like we have a great opportunity in this group to make sure that we're not falling into that and we're stepping back from the conversation. And I certainly am guilty of it just as much as anybody else from time to time. But if I look at these particular topics, that's why I've been thinking a lot about them the last couple of days, is like, we are missing the opportunity to make sure everybody gets on board with whatever the solution is going to be. So, I certainly would like to incorporate you guys to make sure that we are valuing what we put in our strategic plan that says this is important to this community, this is important to this council. And I think there's a way that we can accommodate that and let everybody know just because we didn't do it this way doesn't mean we don't care about it. We're just going to go about it a different way, which is really in my mind what this has been. And I think there's been a lot of, I think it's just been not seeing eye to eye and not stepping back and trying to think through why the other person is saying, let's go this way with it. But hopefully that all makes sense.
Thank you.
Other questions or comments, please?
Do you have, excuse me, is there much plan yet as to what forms the consulting is going to take, or is that still a big open question, figuring it out?
So as one of the people who sits on that staff committee, very much in a beginning phase where I think you might recall that we had a consultant who did a baseline survey with the workforce, and those results were shared with a small team and then asked for more input from some groups who do this work every day or have self-identified. And so now that group is being reimagined into a new group to take those next steps. And the first thing that we're doing is each member of that group, a number of them in human resources with a training background and DEI background and passions for this, as well as a number of us in city manager's office, Deputy Dorr, myself, and a few others, are a procurement person who has a great network. We had no idea. Magically showed up on our doorstep. Are actually talking to two consultant groups we've already interviewed for the first step, as well as other groups and connections to ask them about some best approaches or where they've had success so that we can think about how that might work.
Okay.
And then move. Yep. And so you all know there's a governance structure, who's doing what. And this board is absolutely identified in that space. So I imagine there will be more involvement as things move.
So follow up, it sounds like if we have things to offer, like, hey, at work, we did this DEI thing and it worked really well, or it didn't work well at all, we could pass that to you and that would be a good channel to go through?
I guess. Yes.
I think one of the other things that I think is worth sharing that's important as this council goes through some big changes, such as hiring a city manager, some of those surveys with the employee base have been very important to us because we have seen in certain departments where there's some culture things that need to be adjusted. And so making sure that there's been a safe space for employees to be able to vet that. So like with the city manager search, people were given an avenue that went directly just to the consultants and to the council to say, here's concerns I have, or here's things that we're doing good or things that we're not doing good, so that it was a place that wasn't going to go to management, but was going to go to us so that we could pick the right person to be able to hit challenges they might have or understand strengths that, that they're going to have in the organization when they come in to lead it. So there's been a lot of things like that are the same kind of goals at the end that is going on in the organization that I think is going to be good for our culture in the long term.
And to that point, having a culture of, many employees here have been here 40 years and so that's hard, and it's a large organization. So taking into account all the big picture, all the players here, that a positive possibility with this is if the right consulting group is here and it's a sort of outside, not biased, doesn't know, isn't driving, kind of opens up a trust from more than one group of work group or individual, so having that mindset sort of like, well, maybe this is a better approach than hiring someone and be like, here, come in. And then, what may or may not happen with that. So trying to look at it as an opportunity
Sometimes an outside person can tell you your dirty laundry a lot better than somebody who's, hey, I'm your coworker that has to get along with everybody.
Right.
So.
And then also comes with experience that we may not get from just a person, right? If there's a group or an organization has potentially to offer a lot more for us to continue on that.
I would imagine that if they come in and say, here's like positions you need to address this, like city management's going to take their recommendations. I'm not saying that's what's going to happen, but I don't know. I mean, somebody who's an expert's going to make recommendations. I mean, I have somebody right now who's coming in and basically running my department, which is uncomfortable, but they're coming in and making good recommendations to my organization to say, hey, here's are things that you're doing well and things that you're not doing well. And as uncomfortable as it is, it's been healthy for my team. So, you know, different kind of work, but I mean, I'm typically against consultants, especially in government, because they cost a lot, but sometimes it makes sense. Right.
Can I?
Please.
This is going back to what the Mayor Pro Tem and Michelle were talking about as an example, and this is an example when you were talking about with water, removing sod. I think that's a state thing, right?
Yeah, both. It's both municipal and state.
Okay.
They're different programs.
So when you talk about people who, and a lot of times it tends to be people who are elderly, who have the homes, there must be a group somewhere along the line, like a brothers redevelopment kind of a group, or we have cultural and faith-based and business groups that can be approached and say, you know, as a community thing, and you get the sign to stick in that yard saying, we did this and this is what we've done. And it promotes them. It's a marketing thing. But we may be able to find groups of people. I know there are churches out there that the people are very active, even if it turns out to be an elderly church, they do what they can.
I mean, that's an interesting idea. I wonder, because I mean, that wouldn't be unheard of. I mean, we do snowbusters, we do a lot of volunteer-based things. So I wonder if that might be one of the questions we ask staff that does those programs. Like, would there be a template you could build for volunteer-based groups to say, here's what needs to get done, and use volunteers for the work, or reach out to some of our nonprofits or faith-based groups.
And it brings the community. It gives you that, just what you were talking about, trying to cross this divide and bring it together. When it comes to water, we all are involved with water because we live in Colorado.
Yeah.
So it's going to affect all of us at some point. There's only a small percentage of people who are wealthy enough that it's not going to bother them. But the rest of us, it is going to affect. So I think anything that does a community, I think we would find a lot of different groups out there that would just rally.
Is there some sort of coordinator within the city structure that could help with developing those types of programs? Because it is a great idea. I'm just thinking about the infrastructure needed to put something like that in place, to make the connections.
We have the volunteer.
We have a volunteer coordinator
Okay.
who coordinates the volunteers who aren't board and commission members. Does that make sense? Separate kinds of volunteers. But she does it on models that already exist, or things that already, actually, I don't know that team has developed the programs.
So here's a question for this group, because I mean, this has come up a lot and you obviously have a heart for it. If the staff was able to come up with a program, would this group be willing to try to reach out to some of these nonprofits and build those? If they could come up with a feasible way to say, if you get the bodies or the money or whatever, that here's a way that we could impact change, because I think that might be one way to approach it. Understanding that might be a worthwhile task for you guys.
I think it's a reasonable ask.
I personally, yeah.
It may even be something you could partner with environmental advisory. There's some, crossover and why that would be important to both groups.
Friends virtually, I don't want you to feel left out, of course. Like, I want you to be able to speak up. Did you have anything you wanted to share? Donna, I see your hand.
Yes, I would just like to say, kind of piggybacking on what this conversation is, we have established here at Covenant Living of Colorado a sustainability committee that we are beginning to move forward with some things, and water has been our biggest discussion about that. We are all senior citizens that live here, but we all care much about the environment. we obviously, because we live in this situation that we are in, we're under a corporate policies in some ways, because like that's how they govern us, as well as the 13 or 14 other properties throughout the whole country. So I would say that at least for us, there's some real interest, and we have been talking about how we could get someone to come in and talk with us. And I'm sure we're not the only community of seniors that would probably be really interested in doing something like this. And we just need some guidance, but just know that there are those of us out there that do care and we are interested. And I'm sure that we've got enough people that would be able to help out in some way.
Thanks, Donna.
Donna, you're way more tech savvy than me. I don't know where the raise hand button is, so I'll just have it. But I don't know how much.
It's a bar. There's a bar that pops up down here, Juliet. That's how I found it.
Okay. I don't know how much we've done when it really.
I take that as a compliment at my age.
Right? Hey, I always take them. I say compliments are like water. It's a continual process. So how much have we done with counties? And this is maybe like a more of a question for later that you can touch base with us on, Mayor Pro Tem, but how much work we've done with our county partners that may have programs in place or may have some staff that's directly in this type of program or work. I know when we touched on the diversity coordinator position that you just referenced a little bit ago, Adams County, for example, has a diversity coordinator. They also have a county board for diversity and inclusion. So it might be beneficial where it makes sense for us to kind of collaborate on some of these issues that we see in our community or opportunities that are there for us to address without necessarily using all of our resources if there are resources that are designated for that.
Not sure the answer, but I could certainly follow up.
Yeah, number of cities and.
I know Jeffco does too.
Yeah, and one of our team members helps coordinate the Jeffco conference they do. So we definitely are talking to our friends.
It's a great idea though, Juliet.
Yeah,
Maybe it's one of the things that we could do even as a board. Like I have no problem reaching out to that committee and
You've had the board, who was it from? It wasn't you, it was
I can't hear you.
the board from Park, well, where are they from? Brighton? Remember that?
Oh, yes, that's,
There's other community boards.
I'm still a part of that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I wonder, even talking to them, if they have experience or knowledge of things that have happened too. I know Denver has one. Denver has a whole staff team. We've talked to them a number of times.
Well, it'd be interesting. I don't know if you guys, I'm trying to remember when they came. I used to be on the board of directors before, up until I got elected and I decided I wasn't a good board member. I was too busy, was a senior resource center. So that's definitely a group who can, end up falling in the shadows. So one of the things the Senior Resource Center does, one of their core reasons of existing is to allow people to age in place. And so, they would be, if like we had a program, they would seem like a pretty natural partner because a lot of people who volunteer with Senior Resource Center, they do whatever kind of tasks that Senior Resource Center comes up with. A lot of it is like house cleaning and stuff like that, taking people to go do their grocery shopping and things that, they just need some assistance with. But I imagine that they, if you said, hey, here's a program we're going to do to allow seniors to reduce their costs in water and yard work or whatever it is, they might be a good partner for it. So I have some thoughts around it, but I would want to talk to staff and see like what that would look like to come up with a program where we could put volunteers or programs or partners behind it.
Well, and another suggestion, I'm having difficulty following the main thread of this conversation, but maybe that comes with age. But if you're looking for people to do work, go out and take up lawns or whatever you're talking about. Are we talking about diversity? I'm confused, but okay. Yeah. Anyway, bouncing. Yeah. Okay. Anyway, as far as a group to actually do any type of manual volunteer work or things of that nature, I would offer the Westminster Rotary Club, which I been a member of for the last year and a few months, I guess. And they have a lot of younger folk too that are involved with Rotary, and we do a lot of service projects and maybe
Are you 710 or?
they've merged.
Oh, they merged. Oh, I didn't realize that. When did that happen?
One club now. And, maybe there could be some sort of cooperation between city and a Rotary group of Westminster to accomplish some of these things.
That's a great idea.
Well, I mean, or like the grants, because I think to your earlier point, Michelle, like sometimes they come up with these recommendations when you have them out, but if you can't afford to do their recommendation, what did the free visit do? And
Right,
so
exactly.
like, that might be another avenue is if we say, okay, like what are some groups that you can partner with to do grants or something, or could the city do some grants or maybe a matching grant with Rotary? There's lots of different ways.
Right.
But I'd like to understand from staff, like, because this is one of the questions I actually asked this last week, like how often when people come, when you have visits, is there follow-up done? Like, or do they take the action given to them? And they actually did have some stats around it. It sounded like that it is pretty frequent. But if we pair that with the people who don't take action because of cost, and they're in, they qualify for the low income, then maybe those are the ones that we pick up because that keeps pushing that conservancy needle. It's, so it's a multifaceted result.
Yeah. And that could be something interesting, perhaps, that even Resource Central could sort of adopt into their process is if they're serving a community member in a municipality that maybe has a program, that they make that person aware, because I think awareness is the greatest barrier to entry. A lot of people don't know what's available to them. These programs that can help them, a lot of folks just don't even know that they exist, right? So unless you're having a conversation with someone, in a lot of cases, that information is not going to necessarily find its way to you.
That's true. I will say.
And especially with seniors who aren't as connected digitally.
I think some of our programs, though, that they do allow, like if you're low income, that they actually have some of these programs where you would be able to benefit from city money. I just don't know which ones. And then some of them, you might not qualify, so you'd have to pay for the services. But we could dig into it and find out and see where there's opportunity because, they're around seniors. Sometimes seniors don't qualify for those income qualified things, but they're still on a fixed income and they're struggling with the economy. So there's probably still some room for us to do some good.
Absolutely.
And replacing your sprinkler system is not cheap. We just did that.
No.
It's not cheap at all.
Live with one of those.
Donna, I see your hand.
Yes, just to add to what is being said here, one of the reasons here at Covenant Living that we're looking into this is because of many of our residents are not aware. We pay a monthly fee, but it doesn't, like the rest of you, show individually what water costs a month for us or what electricity does, those individual ones. So we have people that, they don't realize what the costs are. And they're not concerned that much. I mean, they'll leave lights on and all kinds of things like that. So I think anything along that line, and particularly now in the case of water, because I think that's going to be a biggie, we can do to help communities like where I live, and I know there are a number of them in the city, if we come up with some programs to get out and like you say, maybe Michelle, like you're saying, we wouldn't individually get out and dig in the dirt or whatever, but we do. And I'm sure that there are others that feel the same way. So I'm really interested in what's being said here because I think it's got a real value to this community and to where I live in particular.
And please understand, my point was using that as the water as an example since it brought up, but it can be a template to do other things. It's to go out in the community, bring in all the different parts of the community so we are a whole, and to show people, as I said, when I didn't realize about the community up north. So it's just one of those things, and I'm also in favor of actually, because I've canvassed, let's like go out and knock on doors. And as a inclusivity group, be able to get out there and to say, hey, we are you, and just spread our word.
Mm-hmm. Thank you, Alan. Thank you, Donna.
Okay.
Appreciate your feedback. Absolutely. And I think with as numbers go down, as people feel safe and comfortable with the pandemic, I feel like we can definitely be a little bit more ambitious around our outreach efforts, which we'll talk about, I think, shortly with some of our goals. Great. Any other points of conversation or questions for Mayor Pro Tem? Thank you. I know you fielded kind of a lot today, but we appreciate you. Thank you, Cody, for some of your updates as well. Also want to take the opportunity to welcome our guest who is joining us online. We don't know who you are, but you're always welcome here. So happy to have you. Moving into our new business, we did ask for some clarification, I think, at our last meeting around our budget. What budget we had to operate. I think we had some ideas and things around signage and some other points of cost that maybe we could use that money for. So Cody, did you have that information?
I know that it sits in Parks, Recreation, and Libraries, and I have to ask for it back.
Okay.
Because I can't get into their budget, I can't see how much was approved last year. There was a time where we had $8,000, but that's a few years old.
That was a few years ago.
Yeah, it's been a bit. But we're in the middle of our budget process and making those requests. And so those details will become available. All of our requests are due internally by the 23rd. Council has a number of things coming up related to that. So I'm hoping by August, I guess you guys don't really approve your budget until October, but I would at least know it currently exists by August, I think. So hopefully our meeting.
Is it discretionary spending for the group, or does it cover some costs like, well, I know you're an exempt employee, but does it include any?
My vacation. No, just.
Yeah, right. Exactly.
It's for the efforts of this team. So
Okay.
Materials, we've used it for shirts and flyers. Remember those little pocket cards? For things that help you do your work.
And what happens to the funding if it doesn't get spent? Because I know the past couple of years, it probably hasn't.
It doesn't accrue. It's just, an annual budget. So it's like, here's your money. If you don't use it,
But where does it go?
It doesn't add up. Does
Does
that make
It
sense?
does, but do we lose what we were supposed to
It
get?
goes into, I believe it goes into carryover.
Yeah.
So like money that's not spent or money that's, if we get tax revenue above what our projections are, then each department, they'll go department to department and say, what things did you not get that you still want or that you need or that came up? And then that'll go to us. And then also we have a savings fund, and that's how we were able to fare COVID as well as we did. That we also put a certain amount into that. So there's funds and there's a normal process that we do with carryover every year.
But carryover, everything that's left goes into a bucket.
Right, and that's
then
fine.
the requests, and that's fine.
And I
And then you have to request that from them. So if it's still $8,000, for instance, we'll start 2023 with $8,000. And if nothing was spent in our first 6 months, we have that currently and can spend it. Does that make sense?
I apologize.
Yeah, no, that's totally fine. Should we, instead of just waiting to find out how much was there before, should we be putting a budget together to say, these are things we want to spend money on? This is how much we should be asking for?
I mean, yes, I think that would be a good way to do it. At the same time, I also feel like just having a little bit of the funds cut out for us would give us some opportunity to at least know what we're working with. If we have like a zero line budget to where we're just an offshoot of like parks and libraries and recreation, that's fine. But then how can we then budget those funds and then determine, do we need more money beyond the initial amount? I think you're absolutely right. I think, we sometimes, the resources shouldn't drive the plan should drive the resources, right? So I think you're right.
Yeah, but we do need a starting point, is what you're saying. So this is how much had been set aside, at least historically.
Yeah.
So 8,000 is an actual number, not an example number for past
Oops, actually.
That's the reference number for what was in previous budgets.
Correct. And the other, so while I was making eye contact with you, made me think, we've used it for training. We did it for the digital storytelling project that got started. So you've used it for other things like that. I do think it would be responsible to know how much you have and think about how that's going to be used. I also just want to share with you, you're one of the few boards who have a budget. And there was a time where we talked about grants and I don't know where that ever, I don't think that took off.
Actually, Rich, I believe you were on the grant team, right? Rich, were you on the grant team at one point? The grant review team?
I don't recall whether I was on the grant review team or not.
You've been on 100 teams, so.
But it was they were actually mini grants that went not necessarily to existing organizations, but to neighborhood initiatives, as I recall. So it was kind of a grassroots thing.
Yeah.
Did you ever get them out?
Yeah.
I don't think they've ever given, because I feel like Alexa and I'm
I think we approved maybe 2 early on, like many years. I felt like there were 2 that applied, but we didn't, like, this was like 2017, 18. I feel like when Stephanie was on as chair, I kind of feel, because I remember being on a member of that grant committee and we reviewed, I think, 2 applications. That's what I recall.
But did you review applications or examples or legalities around whether or not you could do it?
Right.
Let me see if I can dig into that, because that's what I remember in my head was, because I came in the middle of that.
Yeah.
Was that you had gotten to the point where you could, we figured out that it was a thing that could be done, because we have another board who does it. But I didn't get the impression that it had gotten through a process.
I don't think we did.
Gosh,
What about a committee meeting? And
When I came in at the beginning of 2018, there was talk about it, but nothing ever completed in 2018.
Yeah, and when the digital storytelling never went anywhere.
No, I know. We couldn't figure out how to employ it without a lot of effort.
One thing that we did do, I think, pretty successfully, we did have the community survey. If you all remember, we sat and had focus groups. That was powerful. And frankly, is our most recent data of direct community feedback. We also, I believe, did, what was the special sort of luncheon breakfast we would do?
Oh, the Welcoming America.
Welcoming America.
Yeah,
We did that.
and we had a
Support
membership, well, the city still has the Welcoming America membership, doesn't it? And Lorette
every year, I'm gonna need to check that.
went to a conference for that.
Yeah, she did.
And we now,
Was that paid with the budget?
Yep.
yeah, and we now have potential for some signage and some things. We're still navigating some of the wording. I know Piper.
Well, yeah.
Yeah, and Juliet, I know that that's been something that's been ongoing, so, yeah. Okay, yeah, so I think to Doug's point, yes, I think it is important to vote a budget. I think it would be nice to see for sure what our starting point is, and then we can make those requests as need be, so. Okay, any questions or further conversation on budget?
Just one.
Sure.
Which is, I'm not, now that we're having this conversation, I don't expect that we'll ever not use our funds. But in case we ever do get to that point, is there any restriction to having any of our budget that's unspent going to, say, like the Human Services Board grants pot of money or something to that effect? Just gonna put that out there just to.
I can ask them. We can do budget, like allocate through different funds. The hesitancy is that it's set aside for this purpose.
Yep.
Right?
Yep.
So
We'd have to ask.
We'd have to
Because I
ask,
think
and
we
you'd
would have to, we would have to, I think we would have to say in our budget that the allocation would roll over to that, or we would have to maybe even actually take an action to roll the money over.
Yeah, that's what I was wondering, is if it would happen.
But I mean, that doesn't mean it couldn't be done.
Right.
But it just has to go through the right.
and I think because you're a board of the council, it's a little different than like, oh, I'm in CMO and I need training dollars, so I'm gonna get it from the general fund because it impacts the whole, versus, but I mean, Well, let me ask, I'm emailing them to confirm the 8,000, so
Okay.
I'll also email them and say, if they didn't use it, could it?
I mean, just
And it might
run
be-
into another
we have
weird, like, another pandemic happens, right? And we don't spend the money. I know, right? Exactly.
Or it might have to be very
But,
specific.
you know what I'm saying? Or like we have a plan, but we're not able to execute it within the fiscal year, rather than have that money go off to something, if it was the Human Services Board, we know it's going to serve some purpose that we would be very supportive of.
Or maybe it's a standard operating procedure that it goes directly back to Parks and Library to get inclusive material.
There you go,
You know,
or
like
something
to-
to that
To
effect.
purchase inclusive material.
Absolutely.
CMO, so.
Yeah.
Move to apartments and things, so that's a different.
Yeah, I know,
But yeah,
but it's still under the same umbrella.
Yeah,
I think
right.
it's
Yeah, I
important.
think, but we're all on sort of the same.
Yeah.
Are we still under the umbrella of Parks, Rec, and Libraries?
No,
I didn't think we were.
of city manager's office now.
Yeah.
Welcome.
That's.
A year or so in parks. We tried. You went with Angela and now you came back to.
Well, we're getting sort of a whirlwind tour of all the departments. So
Only two departments.
Okay, great. Thank you very much for those thoughtful questions. Talking about goal setting. So I know that in 2000, well, really the early inception of what our work was as a board, and I know those of you that have been on since our conception, we did a lot of goal setting work. A lot of goal setting work in the first few years and came up with some foundations and really did a lot of wordsmithing work with a series of consultants. So we are now tasked by city council and city management. All boards are asked to bring in their sort of revised or updated goals. Certainly, there's no pressure to do so, but it's always a good idea to revisit the goals. And while I don't make official recommendations for the board to make any motions of any sort, what I would maybe advise in this instance is we have 4 driving goals right now that each have their own objectives. Some of you remember with varied levels of fun as Goal Team 1. Goal Team 3. I like the name.
Remember the Goal Team?
Yeah. But I think what it would be advisable to do at this point, because it's definitely easy to get in the weeds of some of these aspects. And what I mean by that is to really dig in, and it's important work to do. I would advise that we kind of read through the goals. We send out our most recent update, and Cody, I think, has the goals, right? You have our strategic plan, which should include the goals. Cody has everything. But we'll send these out and really ask for everyone's feedback individually. I think this will be important. So this would be a little bit of homework for this board because, obviously we could take hours doing this now. We've had entire retreats devoted to this, right? Mm-hmm. So let's go ahead and individually look at these things, see if these goals in your mind, you feel like they still apply. We do have the new strategic plan by the city now that maybe Cody, you can.
Yeah, I can send that out.
Yeah, you can send that out as well.
The last one, it's dated 2019. Does that sound right? July of 2019?
Yeah.
Okay, perfect. I'm going to reply out to an email Kate just sent and send you both.
Yeah, that would be great. So then what I would advise then is provide any feedback. We'll get a specific deadline. I think I had kind of something pulled up here on a date. I would say if we could get, because we need to get this in by early July.
By July 1st, not early July.
Oh, by early, by this.
I'm very sorry.
So I would say if we could get these feedback by a week from today, Wednesday, the 15th, if you could send any feedback you would have on these goals. And then I would like to see, my advice would be I would convene, or someone who's very passionate about this could convene a committee of anyone who is interested to sit down, take all of the feedback, basically do some sort of a thematic analysis process and really wordsmith to hone in if we feel like they could be updated. Then we send it back to the board as an entity for review, and people give their final feedback, and we do a virtual vote so that we can move forward in a way that feels like it is useful of our time. And then at our retreats, then we only need to have the goals. But the good news is I think if we decide on a retreat or later information, like we could look at our objectives and really dig into the objectives because we only need our goals at this time. Is that correct, Cody? Okay. So I think that would be my advice. I can't formally make a recommendation, but I just wanted to kind of hear your thoughts about if you felt like that would at least streamline the process a little bit. I know it's not ideal, but I know everyone is so busy and we don't have time to meet together for a half a day to do this work. So thoughts?
This way. I think that's a good plan.
Yeah.
That feel okay?
Yeah.
Okay. So does anyone have a recommendation?
I move that we send the goals out for individual review by June 15th. A committee will then synthesize individual feedback and the final document will be sent for virtual vote.
Oh, great.
All right. There's been a motion. Well done, Seth. Michelle has
I
seconded.
will second that. Rich, sorry, Seth, you remembered everything.
Yeah, see?
I'm like, holy cow.
Okay, it's been motioned and seconded. Any discussion? Yes,
I
Donna,
would
please.
just like to suggest, Justin, that included in that is some discussion or at least some description of how, now that we are not under parks and recreation and that sort of thing, and we've now moved under a different category thing, that explanation of that, because the goals shouldn't change, but they might. But I think I personally, because I was under the other process before, would like to know what difference there might be. Am I making any sense in my question?
Yeah, does the move to city manager's office have any implication on our driving? Is that correct?
It shouldn't. Really, staff is just here to help you facilitate your process. You could go to the city attorney's office and they should be doing the same thing.
Okay, and Cody said basically the work lives with this board, not with the city departments. City departments are assigned to support us. So, and answer your question, it will not implicate any change to our mission vision unless we decide it should.
Well, and with what's been going on, the last couple of years, a lot of things have kind of fallen through the cracks, as we have discovered, as we've discussed here. So I think we may all want to go back and reconnoiter some things, that's for sure.
I agree, and I would encourage everyone to prioritize really looking at those goals and really giving some strong feedback around, okay, is this enough? Is it not enough? At the same time, what we all don't want, and I know those of you that are with me and you know this, we don't want to get stuck in goal setting where we're never actually doing anything. We've done more in the past. It's amazing. I think as the pandemic has happened, I think we've done more action items in the past few years than we did earlier. And I understand the process. The process was important. It was very thoughtful. It was very laid out, but we have work to do, and it's urgent work. We have to get there. So I appreciate that feedback, Donna. Thank you. All right. Any other points of conversation or question for the good of the order? Okay. Hearing no more further. Oh, sorry.
You have the binder. I didn't know where it went.
I have. The
magic binder.
I ran and I had it.
Are we taking a vote on the motion?
Yes, please. It's been motioned and seconded. So all in favor of the process as laid out by Seth, please indicate yes or aye.
Aye.
Aye. Aye.
Okay. Are there any opposed? Okay, so moved. Thank you very much. Appreciate all of that conversation. Okay, moving into, get back to my agenda here. Quick subcommittee updates. I know we had some great information in the past meeting with some food access points. Bev, Refugio. I know there's been some shift for Refugio. I know you're not quite as aligned with growing homes as you were, but is there any additional comment or points of update?
Yeah, from me.
Sure.
Okay.
Please.
If anybody has any follow-up questions or about the information that was presented by our community organizer, Whitney Leeds at Growing Home, you can funnel those questions to me, or if you would like to know anything else about Growing Home, I can certainly provide you with that information. I don't have anything to update you as far as food access. We are having an all day or most of the day retreat on it on an upcoming Saturday down the road. The community garden continues to prosper. I go on Monday nights to do the watering, and we have an ongoing schedule every day of the week for people that water and weed and so forth. We have seen a different topic that rising to the surface because our people that come in through the food pantry continues to grow. And some of that I suspect is because of the rising cost of rents. And I don't know how many of us in this group rent or if we're all privileged enough to own our own homes. It's been a very eye-opening situation for me to get further into the whole topic of rising rents, and it's kind of come home to roost on the block where I live, and people are having to move out because they can't, the new owners of apartment buildings, and the rents are outrageous everywhere, and they're given unreasonable deadlines for when to get out with nowhere to go. Consequently, what I wanted to bring to your attention, it's a long-winded way of saying it, is that Growing Home, I guess in conjunction with the city, is cooperating with us on this by providing the Irving Street Library as a place for us to hold this. We are having a renters resource fair on Saturday, June the 18th from 9 to 1. And there's going to be free food. There's going to be a lot of different resources and people there for folks to talk to. I'm sending some of my neighbors there because they need help desperately. And we've got the homeless encampments right behind our properties there along the railroad tracks. And it seems like they keep getting bigger and bigger.
Where is it happening again?
Irving Street Library.
In June what?
June 18th.
Is that also, there's something 10 to noon, I think, is that a Saturday?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's a Saturday.
So I think there's also something in conjunction because
this is 9 to 1, but.
Yeah, and I had something for 10 to noon, but it was really going after unhoused for them to attend. So I don't know if these are competing or.
I'm not sure. Maybe the 9 o'clock date or the time I have is just for volunteers to show up. Maybe it does start at 10. I don't know.
Okay.
Alan, I'm sorry.
Is this something that the city's going to help sort of push out information?
It's Growing Homes taking the lead. Whitney is.
Right.
Our rental housing inspectors and that team are part of it.
Okay, good.
Rentals and Colorado Legal Services. We have an agreement, an intergovernmental agreement with them and all of our lease partners. They're going to be there. So the initial focus was really at renters and resources for renters who were running into any sort of issue with their housing specific and how they could, who was available to help. So that was sort of the initial. So our housing inspectors were there, Colorado Legal Services, and I know Whitney's added some more. So we're.
Right. So I know that they're participating in the actual fair, but is the city pushing out the information through their usual communications channels? Are we not allowed to?
I don't know that we're not allowed to, but it's, we have such a small part in it.
Okay.
And it really is the community who needs it isn't necessarily getting their information from us. Like Whitney is, and Growing Home is probably the right place to be doing that. Okay. The city doesn't usually push out other organizations' activities because that would open a can of worms that we could never close again. Okay. So we can talk about it, but I'm not going to make promises.
Okay.
It's at our facility. I mean, we're trying to help partners.
Right, it's at your facility. You have people from the city participating.
Right. But because it's really the majority is not it's not really ours. We're just trying to help
Right.
We're not.
Although
We
the
want to be
city's,
careful about getting into some of those things.
My information.
I don't believe that it is.
Could it?
I can ask.
Because that's not really pushing anything out.
Yeah.
That's just.
I can definitely ask these questions for sure. I know I hate being this person. But
no,
this
is your job.
what we can and cannot do.
Right.
And what doing one thing opens other things that can become,
Understood.
it's like parking. Right, like we were just talking about parking.
Cody, and I think that's it. Thank you, Bev. I think that's great information. And I know it's been a passion of affordable housing. I know, Rich, you've definitely been a part of a lot of those discussions and advocacy. I know a lot of people on this board have. It's definitely a critical need. I also, Doug, to your point, and Michelle, Doug had started, I know when we were talking about the goals and everything else, we had started at least thinking about what we could do to create a list of resources and then really push the list of resources out, not in an individualized way that would, violate any kind of city ordinance, but rather as like, just these are the resources that, we really need to, outreach and focus on. I think that could be an opportunity to kind of loophole a little bit, some of them, to your point, so. Yeah.
It's just, again, it's hard to get the information out to the people who need it the most.
And so to go back about 18 months when this conversation started, it was around renters struggling with rental housing inspectors, their landlords, and that community group was growing homes. So they're the ones who
Are doing the marketing of this.
right, and they have a marketing person who's doing this because that's where where those needs are being met or addressed to the community in a more direct way than like the city pushing it out to 113,000 residents, and we're not marketing to the people who need it the most. Does that sort of make sense?
Yeah.
Whereas they have I think they have a contract now with a marketing person who is doing worlds of good for them and getting it to the right places. Because our channels are broad. We can't post on Nextdoor. We can't, it's very limited. And so when we share it, and then the risk that we sometimes don't always think about is when we share that, then to what other thing, sort of attention do we invite?
I know
It's sort of like the
conversation we've
homeless.
had over again.
Yeah, it's like having a homeless encampment and knowing what the address is. We don't want to tell people that because we don't want them to do something harmful, right? So it's sort of that same thing. We don't want, I would hate for a bunch of landlords to show up and
I understand that.
the yucky kind, right?
How do we push out or educate people about the legal services?
It's on flyers in libraries and.
So the city doesn't even push those out,
Right.
like the Jeffco free legal clinics and things like that?
Well, we don't have any sort of thing in that. We have Adams County, and we actually support that financially. And again, they use our facility. There's a county-wide flyer. It's the link to the resources are on our websites, on the appropriate resources pages. But it's never been like hey, whole city of Westminster, partner with Colorado Legal Services, and you can call them.
I think so this might be something just at least for this group, because I understand the reason why we don't always push that stuff.
I get it too.
But I mean, for like you guys, when you're trying to help people that are, being marginalized, it's important for you to understand those services are available.
Yeah.
I was here with legal services, and my caveat of supporting it was that it had to be the whole city, because initially it was going to just be Adams County. And I want the whole city. If we're doing something, I think it needs to be every Westminster resident. But that program specifically, I think is great, because bad actors that are landlords that know you don't have resources are the ones who are going to, mistreat people. And so being able to tool people to be able to make sure that, that landlord's acting in good faith or within the guidance of the law is important to me. So, but point being is I think it would be important to make sure that this group understands how they can connect people to those resources.
Okay.
Is there like a link on our page for the city?
I think that would be the thing to do is add it to the specific page where people would be going
Right.
for this. And so I'm making that request right now. I'm also going to ask Whitney if she can share the flyer so we can share it with you, whatever she does the marketing, or maybe Beth.
I have it right here.
Okay. And then you can share that with the group. Yeah, it's never
Well-
I thought about what the other things were until I started
Other
working.
things that I was asking Cody is what you guys are allowed to put on your page of the website.
Right.
Because when you, I know Growing Home does great work and we partner with them a lot with the food stuff. I would probably argue that it's not just rents, but just cost of anything right now with the fuel prices is probably driving people to them. But I think it would be a neat exercise to find out what other food pantries, especially around the faith-based groups, because there's some big ones. So maybe that would be something else that you guys might be interested in, seeing how we can gather what other ones are in the city. So we have one growing list of where people could be able to get those resources that need them. Because I know the mayor, her Westminster's Care Group that started after, I don't know if it was when she was still mayor before or right after, but there's a group of Christian-based groups that do a food pantry. Tri-City does a big one that partners with other smaller churches. And so I think they do theirs once a month, but that's a great resource. I think that's the first Tuesday, Tri-City Baptist on 92nd. So they have but it's just an example. I mean, those to, complement the other ones, I'm sure they don't mind competing and trying to make sure people eat.
Yeah. Fish.
Thank you both. Good information. And I thought the presentation was just very informative. And if there are follow-up questions, maybe submit those to Bev and we can maybe see if you could facilitate those to Whitney and see what we could do. Great. Thank you. Thank you all. Okay, well, let's just kind of open it up to anyone that has anything to report from committees or anything. I know Piper's on like 17, so, I know you're so busy. We're always asking for your writing expertise and, but just kind of open the floor to any committee updates or any general event updates that we have to provide at this time.
As far as the Safer Westminster, I have to apologize to the board because I skipped the voting step. So I need to ask, do we need to vote subcommittee then the entire board?
So typically what happens is a subcommittee will bring the recommendation to the board and then there can be a motion to approve that recommendation.
I would like to request then a subcommittee meeting so we can talk about this more. Juliet gave some really valid concerns about the presentation that I had, and I really would like to talk to her about it in more length, and we have like 5 minutes, about, how she feels about it and what she wants to do and things like that. So can we do that?
Absolutely. Okay. Yeah. And you know what, it's okay. We govern and we are all, doing as we can. We're showing up. So there's no stress.
I was just really excited to be on the show.
Yeah.
And the landmark, the land acknowledgement, I think we're sort of at a standstill with that.
Yeah.
We want to come to the city council with a recommendation that actually is not a rubber stamp which is a lot of land acknowledgements right now. It's like we're on this land and they stop talking about it, right? So we want there to be some sort of reciprocal relationship.
Yeah.
And since Megan, I don't think is here.
No.
She has more information about that. But again, both the Safer Space Westminster and the land acknowledgements are working on a presentation to city council so they can decide whether or not this is something they want to do.
Yeah.
So and we don't know that yet.
Yeah.
And there's a good chance they won't, and that's cool. I mean, that we're an advisory board. We ask you if this is something you want to do.
Yeah. Piper, just to add on to that, because we had talked about, land acknowledgement. We just wanted to really gauge the interest, because what we don't want to do is we don't want to invest funding or resources or these organizations invaluable time and energy to support until we know that there's at least an acceptance of city council. And I know you don't speak for city council, you speak on behalf. But we'd like to maybe just kind of gauge the interest of doing that before we continue. I think that was where we kind of left off, right? So that's kind of where we are. So
forgive me for interrupting. I have another meeting imminent. I'm going to have to jump off. So
Rich,
we'll catch
happy
you.
Race Unity Day.
Oh, thank you.
You're welcome.
Same to you.
thanks, Ray. Appreciate you.
Piper, will you send out that talk again, our email?
Oh, sure, no problem.
Maybe with Juliet's comments so I can pile on. I can't find it
Okay,
in my email. I know you sent it. I glanced at it. It's gone.
no
So
problem.
if you could
I
send
can
it.
totally do that. And Juliet, I would really love, if you can, if you have the time, and understand you're very busy, to, more details on your concerns, I guess. So that we can make sure that those are addressed in a fair and equitable way, because I certainly don't want to bulldoze anyone.
No.
And that is my personality, so I want to make sure that I'm not bulldozing anyone.
No, you're great. And thank you so much for all your work on this, Piper. I know you've put in a lot of time. And so, more than anything, just the communication for us to find a way to find a balance is what I would hope for. So I'm glad that there's some receptiveness, and I'd love to attend that subcommittee meeting when we can get that on the book. So very appreciative of you and your response. And I did see that. I just, I'm conscious of back and forth email chain. So it's like, well, let me wait until we're in person to kind of chat. So that works.
Totally understandable. Thank you.
So if we could maybe Piper, and I'm certainly willing to follow your lead, or I can support like some comment times. Let's convene that subcommittee.
Yeah.
And then we can talk through some of those pieces to move that forward.
That would be great.
The work has been fantastic, and I applaud everyone who's been giving feedback and doing that work. You really, it's been amazing how much you've championed that. So thank you, all of you. So cool. All right. Any other updates?
Just to say that on the luxury tax proposal.
Right.
A lot of the onus rests on me because I have done outreach to municipalities that have removed the luxury tax on diapers and hygiene product, like feminine hygiene products. I'm just waiting for data back that we can include in a proposal to council.
Great.
As well. And I know that that's important to get done sooner rather than later because of your budgeting process. So just trying to get hard numbers. What's that?
I thought we had asked about getting numbers from.
Are you working on it also?
I thought we had asked for when it first came up.
Oh, okay.
I thought I had asked you directly about it. I'll have to follow up because I think I did ask.
Okay, I will.
Yeah.
I think we
I've been.
had talked about it, but then wanted to have our ducks in a row before we started asking for city staff time.
You did, but I went and asked. That's basically how I live.
No, but that's, well, then let me know if you already have something in
Because I'm
mind.
pretty sure I asked if that was possible, and I might have even got something back.
Yeah, and if you've already gotten a good deal of data back or you feel like it's actionable, just let me know, and then that way I won't.
I'll look. I might have got it and then saw a squirrel on.
All right.
Thank you for that.
Shiny.
Yep.
No, then thank you. Okay. Any other updates of our group?
Yeah.
Justin? it's
Yes,
Donna.
please. Hi, Donna.
Based on the conversation regarding Piper and subcommittees and so forth, probably sooner rather than later, this board needs to have some discussion around processes for us as we move forward to make recommendations. I don't think all of us are on the same page all the time, so maybe we need to do something that would, if you want to put that in your minutes, to bring that up at some point or other to talk about that.
Yeah, Donna, I think to standardize the process of how subcommittees work and then move those things together. I think that's part of our growth and to make sure that
Yes,
everyone feels like they're supported. Yeah, I 100% agree with that. So, yeah, great. Although nobody needs to feel like they're doing anything wrong. I think we just need to standardize our governance around it. So, yeah. Great, good point. Thank you very much, Donna, for that. Anything else?
I would invite you all again. I have my policy in Pilsner on the 21st this month.
Oh,
It's always
okay.
the third Tuesday, always at 6:30. Go till people leave or they kick me out.
Coca-Cola. Yeah. Okay.
21st.
Great beer, cauliflower pizza, normal pizza too, but I can eat the
Cauliflower pizza.
I'm pretty sure it's more than I'm supposed to eat, but I just tell myself it's fine.
It's a vegetable, it's
Well,
not flour.
Yeah, and it's really helpful for people with gluten
Yeah.
problems.
They have really good.
Fantastic.
Might be the only way I can get my partner to come with me to something like that.
Same.
I'd like to come. I think that'd be fun.
Do it every month, except for towards the holidays, I don't, because,
Yeah.
well, actually, last year we did it the week of Thanksgiving still, but there were like 3 of us. So the mayor usually comes and some other council people sometimes flow in and out, so.
Okay, and a few other things I think to think about. So just as a reminder, please look at our goals, give that feedback. I do want to start thinking about looking at a retreat model for coming up in the next few months, whether maybe we can aim for a fall retreat as we plan for that, to really talk through, I think, reflecting on what we've accomplished. Those are the wins, and reflecting on what we need to do to grow. I think those are the next steps and the opportunities for growth. So those are always good. And I feel like all of us who've gone through retreats have really, in my mind, been just a much closer group because of it, because we get to know each other a little bit more deeply and succinctly. And, I think that's important. So, okay. Well, hearing no other points of discussion. Oh, Cody, please.
I just remind since for orientation was last night or onboarding, the annual session, highlights thinking about Cora requests and your emails and Open Meetings Act and attendance. So just sort of highlight things. I think you were all there, so I'm just preaching to the choir for those who were not. And if you never Justin.
But I'm pretty familiar after having sort of offline emails about what.
And I would say most of you are also have been well informed, so I was just doing my. Thank you.
No, I thank you all for attending that. I'm sorry I could not be there, but I thank you for all the work. Thank you for all the great discussion. Again, welcome, Alan. We're glad you're here. And we look forward to continuing some great work. So we have some meetings to attend to in the next few weeks. We'll get online and go from there. It is officially, by my watch, 7:37. We will adjourn. Thank you. Thank you all. Thanks,
Thank you.
friends virtually.
Bye. Thank you.
So I had asked what